All right, welcome to the End Zone YouTube. Let's move the chains. Most people are going to be watching this on a rerun. I know it's kind of, oh, sorry, I had two windows open. Most people are going to be watching this on a rerun because it's pretty last minute, as is all this news coming in about the XFL and USFL merger. But we are here today with James Larsen, insider for all the spring football stuff you need to know. And I see some people are starting to trickle in. Y'all post y'all's comments down below, questions concerning. We'll try to get those answered if we can. James, how are you doing?
We're here. We're getting through the week. How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm good. Work's been crazy, and then obviously this has been, I'd say, even crazier. All this merger talk. So, I guess to start, let's talk about what has been officially said by the league itself, not necessarily from reporters or from inside leaks that you've gotten or things like that. Like what specifically has the leagues or representative from the leagues said that's public?
Yeah, I mean, so really all we've gotten officially from the league is the statement that Danny Garcia posted to her Instagram yesterday, which was basically announcing the merger. The leagues are going to play a combined season next year, and that's starting March 30th, which is a Saturday, which makes a lot of sense. We always kind of had the idea that in a merger situation, we'd see a schedule somewhere in the middle of both the XFL, which started in February, and the USFL, which started in April. So that makes a lot of sense. But those are the only two things that are official from the leagues right now. We're playing a merge season next year. The government approved it, and it's starting March 30th. And that's about all we know right now. That's officially official.
Okay. See, so I see a lot of people, on Twitter getting upset because of what seems like a little bit of a leak about the 8 teams. And I do want to talk about, we already have a question coming in about the 8 teams. And I want to get your standpoint on this. Then I want to comment about the 8 teams and whether or not it is happening or not.
Yeah, so 8 teams is the likely scenario right now. Obviously, I had tweeted about it yesterday, and then we saw some other reporters tweeting about it as well. And those reporters went into more of the specifics of the teams that they're hearing that will survive. But besides that, 8 teams is what these leagues have been aiming for a while now. That's what was submitted in the proposal to the government. And originally, it sounded like that had gotten shot down. But now things have changed. Now, of course, Monday, things were signed off on with the government, approving things. And now we're moving forward in a direction that sounds like 8 teams is a very strong possibility. Again, nothing set in stone. And that's why in my tweet yesterday, I made sure to say nothing set in stone until the leagues make it official, right? Because, of course, nothing is guaranteed until they actually announce things. And as we've seen before, there's been other reports coming out from, myself in the past, from other people in the past, because this has been such a fluid situation, right? Off the bat, it seemed like it would be a 12-team league, right? That's kind of what everybody figured was going to happen. That was the vibe all the reporters were getting, everybody from inside and outside the league. So, yeah, the sudden change is another example of just the situation being so fluid. So it wouldn't be shocking to see it slightly change again. But right now, the direction they're heading in is 8 teams.
Okay, yeah. And my thoughts on that are just like with everything, not just this merger, but especially in sports. Like you'll have insiders get information and at that time that information is true, right?
Right.
Like it's likely that there will be 10 to 12 teams a couple months ago, right? But things change. Like if you're into college football recruiting, I mean, it's like one guy can be committed on Monday 100%, then on Tuesday wake up, things change. So I think that what we need to kind of put across, especially in the community on the internet on Twitter, is like this is a fluid situation and
Right.
nothing is set in stone, including 8 teams now. Like it could be 8 teams now. That might be where it's leaning, but it could also change, right? And I feel like, I don't want to speak for you, but is that something that's kind of accurate way to depict the situation that's kind of like this?
Absolutely, because like you said, right now, what we're being told is that 8 teams is the plan. But anything can change because of course, all the details haven't been made official by the league. So until that actually happens, there's a whole bunch of things that can change between now and then. When is then? We don't even know, right? Because we got the announcement yesterday, but all that announcement really had was the fact that the government approved the merger and moving forward. So again, it's something that's fluid. It seems like it's going in this direction, but we can't say that it's actually going to happen until it does happen.
Yeah, and another thing that I think is really interesting that nobody's really talking about is we don't know the details on what the government restrictions are or could have been for this merged league because the government has to improve. I mean, there's a lot of antitrust, monopoly stuff going on that they have to approve to make sure that this can go through. Do you know any details on that, or do you know if there were any possible restrictions? And if you can't answer, that's perfectly fine.
I'll leave it at the fact that obviously with any merger and with any merger in this scenario where you have two football leagues becoming one, the biggest concern is loss of jobs and things like that because there's so many legal regulatory laws and all sorts of things that come into play there, and that was a major concern, especially from the government standpoint, which is why originally 8 teams was shot down. But it does seem like their attitude has shifted. So again, nothing confirmed, nothing concrete from either league, but that's kind of the direction it's going in now. But originally, the government was looking for around 12 teams.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And we'll go into we have a couple questions that one person asked, is that the real James Larsen? Oh, there. Fiddlesticks. Can you
My
verify it's
guy,
you?
the legendary XFL Reddit guy.
Okay, so this is a pretty good question. The Houston question. Like it's probable we're gonna get a team in Houston. It's a big market. It's been a successful spring football market. The
Absolutely.
Gamblers are the Roughnecks.
Oh, sorry. So
Oh
to
yeah,
answer
go
this
ahead.
question, how you doing, John? It's great to see you on here. John, I've been on John's show a couple times myself. As for the Houston situation, that has not been decided yet, at least as far as I know. I'm being told that it's still something that is being worked out. That's something that not only do the leagues have to figure that out, but another factor to consider is the fact that they haven't officially secured a venue in Houston. And that could also play a role in which team ends up in Houston, depending on what that venue wants, depending on what the league wants. So it's a fluid situation. I'll be honest, I can't say which one they're leaning towards because I'm hearing too many conflicting reports on that end. So we're going to see a Houston team. It's basically confirmed at this point, at least from everything I'm told. We'll see which one it ends up being.
Yeah, and part of the stadium problem is Houston, the Cougars, the university, they're moving to a Power 5 or they already moved, but they want to do stadium renovations. So that was the planned stadium, obviously, for the Houston Roughnecks, but now they can't play there because there's going to be construction going on. So the next best available option, I believe, would be Rice Stadium, which is also in Houston. And I mean, I've been there. It's sorry, I don't think it's as good as TDECU, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Do you have an opinion, by the way, on which team? Like, if no insider knowledge at all, just like what team do you think
Right.
should be there?
Well, I can see the arguments for both teams, right? You've got the Houston Gamblers, which is the USFL's brand, and that's a historical brand. You've got guys like Jim Kelly who play on that team, and that's something that the USFL and Fox really leaned into this season. Because if you go back to season 1 of the USFL, they kind of had that whole lawsuit going on between the original owners of the league where like they couldn't refer back to historical facts and things like that. That was a whole to do. But season 2 came around, that was solved. So then on broadcast, we saw a lot of the Fox announcers and broadcasters going back to the 80s version of the USFL. So that is something that could play a role depending on if Fox wants to continue that strategy moving forward. But you got to think the Roughnecks have been a really successful brand the last couple years. If you look at 2020 and then 2023, it wasn't as strong as 2020, but they were still getting some good crowds there. The team played really well under the leadership of Wade Phillips. 7-3, they won the division, and they have a really passionate fan base down there in Houston. So, my personal opinion is I'll be happy either way. I think it would make sense for us to go with the more modern version of the Roughnecks, right? I mean, that's the team that the city is used to having in their city right now. So I think it would make more sense to see the Roughnecks. But either way, I feel like Houston will support the team one way or another.
Yeah, I'm on board there with the Roughnecks, and I have nothing against the Houston Gamblers at all. But also, the Roughnecks have had legal troubles with their logo with the
Yeah.
National Football League because it looked a lot like the Houston Oilers, and that's a good point by the NFL. They don't want their brand to be infringed upon. I would also go Roughnecks because the social media following is greater, and I think that they're just going to have a more passionate fan base, and you don't have to reteach the fan base and the loyalty of spring football
Right.
to the fans. They already have the Roughnecks. It's just a new league with the new title, whether it's UFL or whatever it is. I think it's just easier.
Right, and with the Roughnecks in Houston, you'd have a solid base of at least like 10,000 fans there, like give or take. And I'm being a little conservative there. I think they average around like 12,000 per game this year, but you could get at least 10 there. For the Gamblers, maybe not. I mean, there might be for some Roughnecks fans, they're like, "Oh, you took our team away again. I'm not going to support this new team." I don't really know. That's speculation, but
Yeah, yeah, of course. We've got another pretty good questions, and this is public information. I mean, if you're on Twitter, you will see the thoughts and the statements from players. I'll let you go first on your reaction to some of this.
yeah, well, that question's asked. I got to give a shout out to Pat Ruffino, Analyze and Educate. He does a lot of great work for the XFL News Hub, USFL News Hub. He's one of the top reporters in this scene, guy that he does a lot of work, writes a lot of articles. So shout out to you, Pat. Thoughts on the statements. I'll be honest, this whole situation has been really a bummer, for lack of a better term. You look at the fact that if it is 8 teams, and if this is the direction that it fully heads in, these guys, we're seeing 8 teams get cut. We're seeing a lot of opportunities get knocked out, and that's what we're seeing the reactions of a lot of these players. Just they're upset, they're hurt, and they're frustrated, and I completely relate with them because it's like we were told one thing. We were told this merger is going to be the best thing for spring football. It's going to bring these two entities together, which it is. But at the same time, you're cutting all those opportunities. A lot of guys are going to be without jobs. There's going to be some sort of supplemental draft, but that's not going to include the 500, 600 guys that are probably going to get cut from this thing. So overall, I can fully understand their frustrations, and the fact that the league hasn't really given them any clarity at all whatsoever.
Yeah, again, Pat, thanks for commenting. I've had him on the show. I'm probably going to have him on for a live stream next week as well. Y'all go subscribe to Analyze and Educate on YouTube. It is really interesting because you get a lot of different views, and I've had time to think about it, and I posted this in my video on yesterday. And my first question was, if they didn't merge, would both of these leagues cannibalize each other? And do you think that they could survive on their own? Like where technically, I mean, 2 spring leagues with 16 total teams, right? Which is where we were at last year. In my opinion, I don't think that would have been possible. Now, everybody will say, well, the USFL was profitable. Correct, right? We assume that that went down in year 2, but they were also in the bubbles still, right?
Right.
And that's a huge reason why they were able to make that much money, right? Because they eliminated so many costs. The XFL allegedly lost $60 million in year 1. So it's like it just trying to play devil's advocate here. To me, it kind of seems like from the outside looking in that it was either they merge or they pretty much know doom is coming and the lifeline of both leagues on their own while playing simultaneously wouldn't be very long.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think as much as I hate to say this, as someone who supported both leagues since they started up, at least in their modern versions, we'd love to see 2 spring football leagues, right? We'd love to see 8 teams in each league. I mean, the fact that we had what we had in 2023 is something that I never want to take for granted, just because we saw so many opportunities. We saw so many guys get NFL shots, after their seasons, whether they played in the XFL or the USFL. And it really was the golden age of spring football because we had so much. I mean, we had from February to July, we had spring football. I mean, it was pretty incredible. But at the end of the day, you look at the history of spring football leagues, and most of them have never survived past a couple years, or most of them haven't even made it past 1 year. So you look at kind of that landscape. It's always been in the back of my mind that we would see these leagues merge. I honestly just didn't think that we would have seen it this year. I truly thought that the XFL would play another season. I thought the USFL would play another season, and then maybe 2025. That's when they would try to come together and be like, all right, let's merge, let's get this over with, let's just become one entity. So it did surprise me, a couple months ago when the leagues were like, we are now coming together to try to merge. It definitely caught me off guard a little bit from that perspective because I really thought we'd see another year. Um, but yeah, I think overall you have to merge if you want spring football to be successful. You can't have 2 competing spring football leagues when we haven't even seen one get past 2 seasons in recent history. But it's a shame that we're going to see a lot of lost opportunities come along with something that hopefully gives spring football longevity.
Yeah, yeah, it's a complicated situation. I think there's no way around it. My hopes are that, and I saw this rumor on Twitter. I don't know if it's true. I saw that they would have preseason like 90-man rosters to start for each teams. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying this is wrong or this is right. I just don't know how. Like for me, looking at that, it's like how do you even run a practice with that many players? How
That
do guys get reps?
That is the number that I'm hearing right now, but that's not confirmed. It's not set
Yeah,
in stone. It's just a number that's being kind of thrown around behind the scenes. Which that would be bring a couple factors. One, it'd be great because at least you see a lot of guys get opportunities. But like you said, 90 guys, especially in the spring football scene, to try to cut that, and then you have to cut down to a roster that would likely be around 50, maybe 55 players. I mean, that's a lot of guys that would get axed, and a lot of guys that wouldn't be able to get the proper time and opportunity to show themselves in training camp when it's probably only going to be a few weeks.
yeah. Jamar Smith posted like a hilarious Twitter X comment on that. He's like, at the end of training camp, my arm's gonna be a noodle. I'm gonna have to throw to like 20 wide receivers. Like,
Yeah.
I thought
When
that
is
was
Jamar Smith not tweeting something funny, man? These guys, they've really kept us going here in this offseason between him and Mark Thompson and some of these guys out there. Keep doing what you guys are doing. We love watching the drama unfold.
yeah, they were excited for Under Armour jerseys, which I also think would be a good look for the league. I like the XFL uniforms more than the USFL. I think just having the Under Armour logo, in my opinion, ups the status of the league for me. So I hope we'll get on to some more questions here. This is a good question from Mark Brennan YouTube channel. Was the USFL profitable last year and did NBC re-up? So by re-up, he's talking about re-upping that contract for television.
Well, to answer the first part, was the USFL profitable? I mean, that's kind of been the general consensus of what we've been told, what has been made public. But to be honest, we're never really going to know that information for sure, right? I mean, that information is probably never going to be released. Um, the initial idea is that they were profitable, but the fact that we are seeing this merger come together now, it just makes you question some of the things that we've heard regarding profitability the last couple seasons. As for NBC, they've been dead silent throughout this whole process. I mean, we haven't heard much of anything from NBC at all. I'm not even sure if they're still going to be involved. But that's the type of thing that we'll probably get more clarity on within the next month or so when these details come out of, okay, who's going to be broadcasting, who's actually going to still be involved in the merged unified league moving forward.
Yep, that is a great answer there. I'm looking through some more questions. Um, I think this is a good comment from Richard Humphrey. So, if you're on Twitter or on social media, you can see that teams who are rumored to not be playing, or say rumored for now, they're still signing players like oh my gosh,
The Maulers and the
Ohio
Breakers.
the Breakers have signed players like the wide receiver, I'm
Sean
blanking on his
Coyne.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And then Bryce Torneden re-signed with the Maulers.
yeah. So it's a weird situation, which
So
I've been
my
critical of.
my take on that is that, you know, the leagues haven't made anything official yet regarding teams, regarding structure, anything. The only thing we know is that a combined season's being played on March 30th. So until we get official word on structure, on team format, on cities, on all that, it's still business as usual. It's still business as usual, which sounds crazy. Personally, I'm not a big fan of it because you might be giving false hope to some players that might end up signing and then all of a sudden, like, their team gets folded. We'll see. Or, I mean, maybe folder's not the best term. It might be shelved because we could see them come back. Regardless, I really would like to see the leagues give us some more transparency on what's going on because the players deserve answers. This is a very
Yeah.
strange situation. Livelihoods are literally on the line. Careers are on the line. People are going to be without jobs, and now they might not be able to re-up on other opportunities that they had previously because they signed to one of these teams. So, all around, let's just hope we get some clarity sooner than later.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know what legal hoops they have to jump through. I'm sure the people with the league have signed all these NDAs on what they can and can't share, which has made this all more difficult and frustrating because I don't think it's fair at all that the players have kind of been left in the dark, right? Coaches too. I think Mark Thompson posted on his Twitter. I think it was Mark Thompson, not positive. He was talking about how, like, there are coaches who, like, could have had coaching opportunities elsewhere,
Right.
right? And now their team might not even exist. So it's
Yeah, I mean,
players.
I can confirm just having spoken to a bunch of coaches in both leagues, they've been left completely in the dark, really, throughout this
Yeah,
whole process.
yeah, yeah. All right, we'll move on to another good question here from Greg Witt. Other than the teams that are the teams on pause? So the teams that are allegedly not making the league,
Right.
will they have a chance of being reinstated? And then which teams that didn't have cuts have the best chance of coming back?
Well, that's the second part to your question, which teams you'd have the best chance of coming back. That's really hard to say because we don't even know which teams are fully going to be in this new league. I mean, we have an idea. I have an idea. I'm not going to publicly say which ones I think are in and out just because, again, it's fluid. But, you look at a team like the Vegas Vipers who don't have a home right now. They were already planning on relocating that team for the 2024 season before this whole merger thing came about. They're a team that I could see getting shelved and probably putting on hold longer than others, only because, they don't really have an identity. They don't have a city. They don't have a venue. So why would you try to, it wouldn't make sense to see them get back in a new city rather than a team that already has an established brand. But yeah, that would be my answer to that. Again, it's so fluid. It's hard to say which teams are going to be in and out until we actually get confirmation.
It's funny that you bring up the Vipers. It's not too long ago when I was hearing that they would possibly move to Arizona and Nashville. And here we are. So
Right.
I think that speaks to the fluidity of the situation here.
I mean,
But
that
yeah,
that was the plan until the plans changed and here we are with the merger. So,
yeah, and I think that speaks to just the environment of how this has gone. Like it's crazy times we live in right now. Sorry, my phone is blowing up. Looking through some more questions. All right, here's a fun one. I got my answer.
can you name a player other than Jim Kelly from the Gamblers?
I don't
You
know if he's
know,
talking about original
yeah,
or the
yeah, he's
current.
talking about the original Gamblers. Pat's really calling me out right now. Um, Not off the top of my head.
No, I can't. I can name someone on the new roster, but not the original. Okay, I haven't heard about this. What is going on with the Canton rumor supposedly having a team brought and rebranded there?
Um, That again, that's part of the fluidity of the situation where you're looking, and Canton was selling tickets, right, for the USFL. Canton is a venue that was secured for the USFL's 2024 season. Is there a transfer still in play? Sure. You can't ever say no until you actually get told no by the leagues officially. Um, I don't think Canton will be a part of the new league. It sounds like they're moving on because Canton never had a team to begin with. The only way that would be possible is if the new league decided to rebrand one of the teams, maybe one of the teams that played in Canton, and stick them there. But from what I'm hearing, that's unlikely.
Okay, this is another throwback thing that I was hearing. I'm sure you've heard about. Like this happened months ago, maybe even a year
This
ago
was
with
years
the
ago.
CFL,
This was
XFL.
before the XFL even announced their. I think this was before the XFL even announced their teams for the 2023 season. Um,
Yeah,
I don't think we see this happening at all, at least not in the near future. The league's more focused on let's figure out which teams that we have secured here in the United States. If there was a conversation to be had with Toronto down the road, it would be a while. That I highly doubt that the Argonauts are at the forefront of their priorities right now.
yeah. They were just competing for a Grey Cup, so I don't think they're thinking about merging. Greg, I hope that answers your next question on the CFL. Gonna move on to okay. So this is a question specifically about the Sea Dragons. Again, I'll just go ahead and say it that it's a fluid situation. And there are rumors on Twitter of which teams will make it, but we don't necessarily know who those will be. I don't know if you want to speak to the Sea Dragons specifically.
Yeah, I mean, we can look at some of the reports that were released by Mike Mitchell and John Vogel with their 8-team structure. And that would feature, either 3 or 4 USFL teams and either 4 or 5 XFL teams, depending on if Houston goes Gamblers or Roughnecks. The cities, though, in their proposed setup would be Birmingham, Memphis, and Michigan. Houston, of course, is up in the air for each league, and then from the XFL, it would be DC, Arlington, San Antonio, and who was the other team? Why has it escaped my mind? DC. So Seattle's not likely to be in it if that proposed 8-team setup is true. And it would make sense, mainly because if you look at the map, right, of how these leagues are trying to save money in this merger, you got Seattle all the way on the West Coast, far removed from basically every other team in the merger. I would see them on the chopping block simply for that reason. But again, nothing's confirmed until the leagues say it is.
Got a quick fun. Oh, okay. Wait, I actually skipped that, but we can go ahead and answer this. So I think this is not this upcoming year. So like, if there were 8 teams this year, then the next year, what percent chance would 4 teams be added to that?
Um, I would say pretty low. I I don't I don't think they're going to rush into adding teams back. I think first and foremost what they're looking to do is get through one full season as a merged entity, and then after that season they'll reassess where they're at and then figure out what to do from there.
Yeah, I agree on that. Also, I do believe that they are trying to sell franchises eventually, whether it's the MLS
Absolutely.
route or the NFL route. They're different philosophies and theories on how to sell franchises. The Premier Lacrosse League has a unique way of doing it. MLS kind of had a really breakthrough way of doing it. So we don't even know what that would look like, whether it would be true franchises or the XFL would still own the league and basically rent teams out, things like that. Here's a little fun one while I look for some more questions. You have a quick power ranking. Could you rank the 8 teams based off last year? Power ranking?
Rank the 8 teams based on I guess Mike Mitchell or John Vogel's prediction.
I guess it would be would it I guess it would be off last season because the rosters aren't complete. Or you could do
Right.
this year.
Well, if you're looking at, let's see, John Vogel, is he's hearing that The XFL is retaining Arlington, DC, San Antonio, and St. Louis. The USFL is returning Birmingham, Houston, Memphis, and Michigan. So if we're hypothetically using this format, I'd instantly put Birmingham at number one. I truly think that they're the best team across both spring leagues. Just their dominance has been unheard of. Back-to-back champions, and they have a lot of their pieces coming back. The only thing that would make me question Birmingham being number one is that Alex Magoo is on the Green Bay Packers right now.
Yeah.
And this team was very dominant with Jamar Smith in season 1. Can Jamar get back to that level of dominance again in season 3? That remains to be seen. That's something that we'll hopefully get more clarity on, as the season begins. I'd give Birmingham number one. You have a couple XFL teams I'd say would get number 2, number 3, with DC coming in at number 2. Obviously, I know Arlington won the championship, but I truly think that DC is the better all-around team, and then Arlington just got right. They got hot at the right time. And Luis Perez, he's just a legend. And I'd put Arlington at number 3 for that reason. And then St. Louis comes in at number 4. Number 5. See, here, the biggest problem is that we don't have clarity on quarterbacks for a lot of these teams, a team like the Michigan Panthers, are they going to get EJ Perry back? If they get Perry back, I'm putting them at number 5. If they don't, if the Panthers don't get EJ Perry back, I would put Memphis at 5. I'd put Michigan at 6, San Antonio at 7. And the Houston Gamblers are currently without Mark Thompson, so I'm going to have them at 8.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like with the Breakers, they've been historically solid, going 7-3 last year, but the McLeod Bethel Thompson, he's probably not returning to the Breakers. So
Right.
that also is like, what's that backup there? Okay. We'll go on to some other questions. Just looking. Here's a good question. I'm sure you can read that. But Daryl Johnston's role inside this new league, what do you think it would look like?
That's a really great question, and that's something that is really hard to say because according to Ben Fisher, Russ Brandon, who's the current CEO president of the XFL, he's going to be the top executive in this league. So there's a couple things that could happen here. One, Daryl Johnston might not be involved with this new league. That's more speculation. That's nothing that's confirmed. So before people run with that story, that's just speculation. The second thing that could happen is that Mark Ross, who is, vice president of football operations for the XFL, he's not with the league anymore, and he's not returning for next season. So Johnston could fill that football ops role. I think that's what he would really fit into well. So if he's involved in this new unified league, I'd say Daryl Johnston would sit into a similar role there as to what Mark Ross was doing for the XFL.
I'd hope that he has some type of role. I worked for the
Absolutely.
USFL, and I worked on the sideline. I was basically an intern. It's not like I was given much duty and stuff, but like I would pick up trash after games, and he would be on the sideline picking up trash. I like got to have conversations with them. Like I could tell just meeting him personally, super humble, leads by example, and he's somebody who, and I'm sure he also brings great football experience and operational experience to the league, but I'm just
No
talking
doubt.
about my interactions with him. I would hope that if he wants to, maybe he doesn't want to, but if he wants to, he would have an opportunity to be a part of growing the league.
You'd absolutely hope then. I completely agree with you there. Someone who's also had some interactions with him, just super down to earth. He's all about the players, just a really straightforward stand up guy. And another thing to take into account, he's been involved in every single one of these spring leagues up until this point, right? I mean, he was in the Alliance of American Football. He was a general manager of the San Antonio Commanders. And in the XFL in 2020, he was with the Dallas Renegades as their director of player personnel. And then in 2022, of course, took the role in the USFL. Then in 2023, he became the president of the USFL. So a ton of spring football experience. If you want spring football to survive, you would think Daryl Johnston should be a part of it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Okay, so I never saw this, but this is an example of the fluid situation.
Right.
If XFL News Hub posted this, because I'm sure that they have sources that are good too.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and we know for a fact that the USFL was exploring all markets this offseason, whether it was Philadelphia, whether it was New Orleans, whether it was Houston, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, any team that wasn't in their home city. Of course, Fox was looking into. There were some teams that had higher probability than the others, but it definitely, no doubt, Philadelphia was in talks with the USFL. Did those talks continue into these merger talks? Definitely a possibility of that. Whether or not Philadelphia gets a team in this merger, you can't really say. It definitely sounds like in this new league, we won't be seeing the hub system just based on what we've been seeing so far, right? Because a lot of the teams that are speculated to be in this new league, they already have home venue secured. So, Philadelphia would probably have to secure a stadium deal to be in the new league. And we haven't heard any confirmation on that at all. So we'll wait. We'll have to wait and see. But nothing really on that end right now.
It would be difficult. They'd have to play in the Eagles stadium. My guess. I mean, I've been to Philadelphia. I know that they have a soccer stadium. Um, Actually, no, they have the is it the Philadelphia? I can't remember. I've been there for Premier Lacrosse League games. It's a pretty nice stadium, but there are definitely some options. Got some St. Louis fans in here. I can almost 100% guarantee if you're a Battlehawks fan, uh, they're going to be in the new league no matter what. Them in Birmingham, they're
Yeah,
like
I mean,
virtual locks.
you again, nothing is 100% until it's 100%. But any merged league, any spring league that wasn't going to have the St. Louis Battlehawks a part of it, they're not going to survive long term. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
They're a
yeah.
lock.
What cities do you think deserve a team? I think Columbus would be perfect. Columbus Crew Stadium. It's an MLS. So MLS has been, as we've seen, great stadiums for spring football. Plus, it was a top television market for the XFL. This is just speculation and
Yeah,
talk.
honestly, a team that I would love to see have a team at some point again, whether it's 2024 or down the road, is honestly Canton. You got that Canton Cleveland connection there, kind of a shared TV market, which is one of the top 20 markets in the country. And as someone who experienced football at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium there a couple of times last year and then a few times this year as well, it was a really special experience. It was very unique to have pro football being played at the Hall of Fame. Tom Benson Stadium itself it's perfect for spring football. Literally is ideal. It seats around like 22,000 people. Just the environment's very like intimate. It's very professional. The field is beautiful. So I'd love to see a team there. Whether or not that happens this year, we'll see. But that is a stadium that I'd love to see. I'd love to see Canton have their own branded team. I really feel like that could be a unique situation for the league.
I agree. That to me made no sense by the USFL. Why would you not just rebrand them to the Canton Maulers so you could get more people, um, I guess, impacted locally in the area, especially so they could have more of a connection, whether it's Canton or Columbus. Like if there's a team in Ohio, I think long term, especially like if there is an expansion, if they have 8 teams, just if, speculating here, I think you'd have to have a team in Ohio because they love professional football. They also love college football and high school football. Ohio is a great football state. Okay. This is a good question. I have my opinion on it. But what's yours on the divisions possibly?
This is something that's kind of being thrown around. I think it's something that's definitely in discussions between the leagues right now. Moving forward, it's something that's on the table. By no means confirmed. We could definitely see divisions end up being, whatever the new league name is, North and South, East, West, however they divvy that up. But there is a chance that we could see an XFL and USFL division.
Yeah, I think more of this would just be for the fun of it. But I wouldn't want them to make an XFL and USFL division if it creates more costs for the league, right? You'd want the
Exactly.
divisions to be geographically based. Like, ideally, you have all the Texas teams in the same division if there are 3, maybe even 2 Texas teams, right? So I think that while it would be nice and cool and it makes sense, also you got to think about it from a financial standpoint, and whatever they can do to keep costs down is the way to go. Then Franklin Fields, that was one of the fields in Philadelphia. Got another question about a team in Miami. I haven't heard about that.
I definitely don't think we see a team in Miami
No.
anytime soon. If the leagues are in Florida or go back to Florida, you'd assume they'd bring back either the Tampa Bay Bandits or stick with the Orlando Guardians.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In Orlando, it's weird. I really thought Orlando would be a home run. Maybe it was because in the new XFL, I'm speaking, because in the Alliance of American Football, they were a home run. Now, they were also playing in Central Florida Stadium, the Bounce House, whereas the Orlando Guardians were not. They were playing in, I forget what stadium it was.
Camping World.
Camping World, yeah. And I think that might have had something to do with it, location wise. I don't know. I'm not for Orlando or from Orlando.
Honestly, in my opinion, I think some of these cities in the XFL underperformed a little bit just because they kind of got announced a little bit too late in the game, right? A lot of stuff before the XFL 2023 season started. It seemed like they were a little behind schedule. I just don't think they had enough time to do proper marketing in some of these cities, Orlando being one of them specifically.
Yeah. Here's a pretty good question. And I can answer this, although I won't name names, or I can name a name of a person who I heard of early in the USFL that's no longer a rumor, but I'll let you tackle this one first.
Well, speaking more from the USFL side, we know that for one in Memphis, they had, which might be where you're going with Fred Smith and the FedEx owner down there. That's kind of public information. He helped get the team there. So we could definitely see Memphis maybe getting sold off to someone like him. Michigan, I know, also had some help. I can't name names, but that's a team that I could see getting sold off. As for XFL franchises, I'm sure that Redbird Capital has been in conversations with potential owners, or they have potential owners that are on their mind that they're going to be reaching out to. So when that does happen, whether it's next year or 2025 or 2028 or whenever it might be, there definitely will be some names lined up for these franchises.
Yeah. So Memphis is the obvious one, but early on in the USFL, there was a rumor, and I don't know if it was true or not, but it was being reported that A-Rod wanted to purchase the New Jersey Generals or was interested in purchasing the New Jersey franchise. Obviously, A-Rod played for the Yankees, legendary baseball player. But yeah, and I've heard, being from Birmingham, obviously I'm not going to name names. I've heard of people who are interested in the Stallions because the Stallions have also been a home run. I'm sure that there's somebody in St. Louis who's
You
been
have
to
to
a game.
think.
Yeah.
Now, here's a hypothetical one. This is purely me wanting to manifest this into happening. DC, I feel like it'd be really interesting if we saw Kevin Durant get involved with the DC Defenders. And the only reason why is because he's obviously extremely successful. He has a ton of money. His businesses have really taken off with Boardroom and some of the other ventures that he has. And he's very invested in DC sports. He's obviously a big Commanders fan. He's a big Washington sports fan in general. So I feel like it'd be really neat, if you get someone like him, even if it wasn't a majority stake, but even like a minority stake in the team, I feel like he'd be some good branding, good recognition, and would just be great PR for the league all around. So again, that's just something that I've never once heard it said in my life. It's just something that I think would be really neat.
And people like there's kind of, at least this is what I see on social media. Obviously, there are negative things about the Washington Commanders franchise. I don't need to be
There might
I don't
be
need
just one or
inside
two things,
information to
yeah.
tell people that. And there's a lot of positivity around the Defenders, right? Like
Absolutely.
people say that the game day atmosphere at Defenders games are more fun than the NFL games, which it's not the NFL that they have a bad atmosphere. It's that the Commanders have had a history of bad things just happening. Has kind of
Yeah.
been like a snowball effect going on there. But Kevin Durant, he's got sports ventures. He owns equity in the Premier Lacrosse League, among other
Exactly.
things. So
I know he's invested recently in pickleball too. It's like he's been investing in these up and coming sports. So I feel
yeah,
like it'd be a great fit for him to invest in an up and coming league.
Man, we need to work for the Rock in this new league and find some investors. Okay, looking through some questions. There are a couple things about here's a pretty good question about Austin. And again, I haven't heard anything about Austin, but
Austin's
Austin
always
would be.
been just like more so hearsay rumors than anything. Like, hey, there's two Houston teams. Let's relocate one of them to Austin. That was when the leagues were separated. So now that they're coming together, Austin's not in the picture.
Yeah. It would be cool at the rate Austin's growing. Maybe get on that ship before like an NFL team expands there, another professional sports team. I know that their soccer team does pretty well in Major League Soccer, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I've heard things about that. Okay, let's see. Here's a good question from Anthony Mazzano. Can you guys see this happening where the NFL sets up a contract with this new league merged and uses them as a minor league system? That's the great question.
It's a
You have the general
fantastic
manager.
question,
Yeah.
Anthony. And it's something that's always kind of been on the back of these leagues' mind, and probably on the back of the NFL's mind too. So something I believe I tweeted about this a couple months ago, which is something that's kind of more public knowledge now. But the NFL, of course, they've had like some working relationships with both leagues, right? Testing out rules with different things, the NFL Alumni Academy, all that. But they of course didn't have like any official partnership. And the main reason why is because there were two spring leagues, and the NFL is like, well, let's just wait for one of these to die out, and then maybe we'll end up partnering with one of these leagues eventually. So now that these leagues are coming together, I think there's a much higher percentage of a chance that we do see the NFL work with this league down the road at some point. I think it'd be great to see, like you said, the NFL, they don't have a minor league system like the NBA or the MLB does. And it would make a lot of sense for these spring leagues to be that platform, or excuse me, the spring league to be that platform for the NFL, where you have assigned teams to assigned organizations in the new league. And then you have players that can be taken up, that can come down for development, things like that. Somebody gets injured. It's like, oh, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they need somebody. Let's just say hypothetically the Pittsburgh Maulers are in this new league. Then that a player from the Maulers could come right up, and join the Steelers. So again, that's hypothetical, but it's something I think would be a real possibility, and it's something that Daryl Johnston was pushing for with the USFL before these merger talks.
Yeah, that's a tale as old as time with spring football. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, really, I feel like after the USFL in the 80s tried to do their thing where they were the other professional football league, like, they were offering guys millions of dollars, getting guys like Herschel Walker, Doug Flutie, all these big names and stuff. Ever since then, after that, spring football's changed to kind of, and like, I don't want to call it minor league because these are professional football players, but they're they are a level below. Like if they could play in the NFL and you ask them if they had a choice, they'd be like, I want to play in the NFL, right? They want to make millions and stuff. And I have a lot of people commenting on the channel, like, I don't want the XFL or the USFL to become an NFL minor league. I was like, I mean, I hate to tell you, but it kind of already is, right? Um,
Like, the leagues know their place, I think, is kind of the
yeah.
bottom line right now. They know they're not trying to compete with the NFL. That's never been the XFL or the USFL's goal. Their platform has existed to be a professional standalone football league in their own regard, but to provide these players with an opportunity and the national exposure that they got, whether it was ABC and ESPN and the XFL or NBC and Fox and the USFL, just a chance for these guys to get some sort of exposure in front of these NFL teams to get back in the league.
Yeah, and another thing that I always thought would be really good is, look, people watch preseason football, right? And people watch spring football. And, if there are like 16 teams in the future and they finally get the opportunity to become part of this minor league of the NFL. And you wouldn't have to call it the minor league. You just call it like a feeder league. You don't have to use the word minor. I'm sure they could pay some marketing people to figure that out, right? I think it would boost ratings. Like I think like if you're a Patriots fan and there's like Patriots quarterbacks around the league, it doesn't even have to be by team. It could just be specific players. Like you draft a guy and you want him to go
Right.
play in spring football to get developed. I think like people would watch quarterbacks if they just have a Patriots sticker on the back of their helmet and they know that like, oh, the Patriots have the rights to that player. That's just me. I'm that's pure opinion, by the way. I'm not saying any of this would ever happen. That's just my idea that I
No,
have.
I agree with you completely. That would be a really great scenario for both leagues, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it would help. And the biggest one of the biggest hurdles, and I heard this in the Alliance of American Football. So if y'all were fans of the Alliance of American Football, back then the Alliance of American Football basically, and it's been a while since I've talked about this or read about this, but to my understanding, they basically like went to the NFL and the Alliance of American Football, there a lot of bad things happened. They lost funding. One of their top investors went to jail. They got really desperate and they were like, make us a minor league right now to the NFL. And the NFL was interested. I don't know if they knew about these financial problems, but one of the main problems is the NFLPA, because then you have to add those players to the NFL Players Association, and that costs a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort. You're adding basically however many more teams are in these leagues plus the practice squad. Like it's not just that simple as adding these teams as a minor league like that. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to this is a good question that I have no idea how to evaluate.
That is a really good question, and honestly, it's hard to know until the teams get appraised. That's something that I think would happen. Whether it's maybe after this upcoming season or after a couple seasons. Get a professional appraiser in there to take a look at these teams, value them, and then try to pitch them to potential investors and owners.
Yeah,
My guess would be, probably maybe around a few $100 million. But that is pure speculation.
yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have the insights to the balance sheets and the income statements for each team and the leagues. So no really
Let's just
real
hope it's in
way.
Kevin Durant's budget.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Andrew Little, I think we answered his first question because he said, look at my previous two questions, I believe. He said, so this is talking about like the philosophy, more of an MLS approach to franchising, where I think it would be smart for the leagues to have partial ownership of these teams, where you kind of sell the teams to these owners who, yes, they do some operations and stuff, but keep most of the operations on the league side. And you give the image that the owners are the owners. Whereas like the NFL is like, if you're an owner, like you've got to have the facilities, you got to hire all these people. And that leads to some good ownership, but also, as we've seen, Commanders are a great example, bad ownership. It makes it more difficult. There are different theories and ways to go through franchising. From fast food restaurants to football leagues, there are different ways to do it. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think that would be a really interesting concept to see utilized, and I think it's something that would make a lot of sense given the scenario, right? Because the MLS had a somewhat similar startup to a league like the XFL or the USFL, where trying to build something from the ground up. So if you could pull that off, where you had owners that were more in a partial ownership situation, and then eventually take over more ownership of the team down the road, I think it'd make a lot of sense. It'd be good for the league, and it would help the league executives kind of keep things controlled for the first couple of years.
All right, so this is the question I got mixed up. Somebody asking two questions. Anthony's got a good question. And have you heard about this league that I believe is it in California or something?
Is it
That I think
the one
Brian
that
Woods
Brian
is.
Woods is heading
Yeah,
up? Yeah,
yeah.
I have heard about that league.
I don't know how I feel about it. For those of you who don't know, there's a proposed football league that will basically just take high school kids and pay them to to play. It's basically like NIL without school. But that's a whole nother conversation for another day. I don't know if that's healthy for the look of the league, honestly, though, to do that. Because I mean, if you have an 18-year-old go out there, like there's some older guys in the USFL and XFL. If they go out and they just hurt a younger kid, I don't think that's a good look. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I have some thoughts on that I'm gonna keep to myself for now. But I don't think we would see a merged league have any association with high school kids at this point.
Also, like I could see it maybe working out financially pre-NIL era, but a lot of these high school kids are making millions of dollars in college now, and there's no need to do that and play professional football. We're coming up on the hour. We'll get through some of these questions because I know James and I are both busy with school and with work. Just trying to sift through to find some questions. Greg Crawford, it's an honor. I always see Greg around town. He's a loyal Stallions fan. This is because looking through. Okay, here's what looks like one of the final questions. Have they announced the name of the merged
They have
league?
not announced the name. Uh,
Yeah.
the the direction I'm hearing is that the name that the XFL had trademarked a while back, the United Football League, if they change the name, the United Football League is what it's gonna be. There's still a chance that they maintain the branding of one of the leagues currently, but the direction it's going in is UFL.
Okay, I think if y'all have any more questions, get them in. We'll go for like 2 more minutes, coming just short of an hour long. It's been a good live stream.
Absolutely, and while I wait for questions to come in, something I kind of want to say publicly here is that when we're talking on Twitter, whether we're talking in YouTube comments or on social media, whatever it might be about the merger, let's just make sure we're being respectful of the players and the coaches, because whether your team made it, whether your team doesn't make it, there's going to be a lot of lost jobs, a lot of lost opportunities for guys. If it does end up being an 8-team scenario, it's tough for me personally to get like really excited about that just because, as someone who knows a lot of these players, as someone who's been covering these leagues, again, spring football is all about providing opportunity, not taking them away. So let's just be mindful of what we're saying online. Let's be mindful of, maybe not parading around too much. Even if one of your even if one of your major rivals is not going to make it in the new league, let's try to keep things in a straight line.
Exactly. It and the way I describe this is bittersweet. We're gonna have
Yeah.
to cut a couple teams down, however many it is, to get stability in spring football and ensure that there will be jobs in the future. And hopefully that, these teams on pause, what we'll call it, could make a return. But it is sad. And I said this like a long time ago when the merger questions were happening when it like first came out. I was like, people are going to lose jobs. Like these are people's lives. But then again, it's like it's sports. Cuts happen, and it's going to be more competitive. Um, it's a hard line to walk. Right? It's not an easy situation for anyone. Any other comments? I don't see any more questions coming through, but it's been fun. I'm trying to
Yeah, I
get
mean,
some players on as well. If you want to come on too for like kind of like a round table thing. I don't know.
absolutely. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming down the pipe here. I think it might be a little while before we get full clarity on which teams are going to be in and which teams are out. That hasn't been officially set in stone. So until then, it's just we have to continue playing the waiting game, and that's how it's been the last 2.5 months, and this is the way it's going to be for a little bit longer. It seems.
Yep. Patience is a virtue. That being
Patience is
said,
strength. Frank
yep.
Murtha.
Hope everybody has a good weekend and good holidays if we don't hear any news before then. But it's been a fun live stream. Thanks for joining, James, and thanks everybody for joining in the chat. I did not expect to have this many people on, as this was very last minute. Everybody out there, make sure to move the chains, keep it going, and keep your head up through whatever you're going through.